And Mr. Appel?
Ross Appel, City of Charleston, District 11. I've got parts of West Ashley, parts of James Island.
And Sandy?
Hi, sorry, had to unmute myself. Sandy Senn, Senator for District 41, which has James Island, Johns Island, West Ashley, even a little bit on up into North Charleston and Somerville.
Okay, I have a telephone number that ends in 32. Who is that?
That is Cynthia Mignano, Town Council, James Island.
And then I have a phone number ending in 48.
That's me, Troy Mullinax, council member, Town of James Island.
And then I see Chip. Chip?
Chip Campson, Senate District 43, Charleston, Colleton, Beaufort counties, and James Island.
Okay, Ashley, introduce yourself.
Hey, Ashley Callahan, Town Administrator.
And you've got some staff standing by, is that right? Okay, well, welcome everyone. I'm sure you all got a copy of the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move for approval.
All right, all in favor, just raise your hand. All right, okay,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Now we've got some public comments, Ashley, is that right? I'm looking at the agenda. Submit it to the minutes.
Yes, I have asked everyone as an attendee if they would like to speak during public comment, to send me a message or to raise their hand. And I don't have any yet. So,
All right. Well, let's head on over to Rethink Folly Road Phase 1 update with Toma, is that the name? Somebody from the county?
Every Datoma.
Oh, okay, all right. Is she ready to give us that report?
yes, 1 minute and I will promote her to a panelist.
Hello, can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Hi, Devery.
Hey, how are y'all doing?
We're great. Thanks for joining.
Okay, so I know we haven't had a Rethink Folly meeting in a while, but we gave 70% plans to all the municipalities to the DOT review. No one has provided comments. We are still proceeding with 90% plans, and we'll actually have 90% plans in about 2 weeks. I just got an 80-page participation agreement from the DOT that I am currently reviewing, as well as our legal department, since we do have $1.5 million in federal funds for that project. So we'll be getting them our comments back in the next 2 weeks. And I may go over that with the town and the city, because there are maintenance requirements that will be put upon the city and the town as part of that agreement. So I will get with staff and go over that participation agreement with them. And once we get that participation agreement executed, we can begin the right-of-way acquisition for that project.
Hey,
So-
Devery, would you
Yeah.
mind reminding everybody where this project runs from and to?
Sure, it starts at Ellis Creek and it goes to Folly and Camp, where those improvements were just done. And then it flips to the other side of the road, to the east side, once we get to Folly Camp, all the way to the Walmart. Actually, it goes slightly past the Walmart, but it basically goes to the Walmart. And it's going to be a 7 to 8 foot sidewalk on one side of the road, either the west and the east side, either or.
If you have any comments, want to ask any questions, raise your hand. Carol Jackson, go ahead.
I've been privileged to serve on behalf of the city on the Rethink Folly Steering Committee. So I know that those of us who've been to those sessions, probably know this a lot more regularly than some of the members of our panel that are following along from a farther distance. But I think one of the notable improvements that we were able to negotiate out of the existing funds was to, because we are taking it down to Walmart, and we're sort of sacrificing width along the way, basically going from west of Folly, where the original phase one was expected to be, all the way down to about Prescott, as I recall. But in order to avoid having to deal with any of the huge transmission poles, that's when we made the determination to move it over to the east side, south of Camp Road, make the sidewalk a foot smaller when we need to go around trees and impediments. But the bonus for that is we are going to radically improve or create a crosswalk at Walmart where there really is not one at all. It's a very unsafe pedestrian situation down there as people try to go on both sides of Folly to the bus stops. So we're going to be able to have a very safe sort of raised bed crosswalk is my understanding from what our designers worked out with the county. So I consider that a great trade-off personally.
Right, and all the much, it's been a lot of thought put into it by the committee, and we do have on our website all the presentations that have made to the committee, and all the decisions that they've had to make. So if anybody really wants to look into it and all the thoughts that has been put into it, it is on our website.
Anybody else have any questions?
We also have on here the intersection improvement projects, and we just got Secessionville and Fort Johnson out to the public online. I don't know if y'all all have had a chance to see that, but I've asked Ashley. It's a really quick video. If y'all want to see it, we could show it to you. So we are asking for public comment right now for that project.
That would be wonderful if we could show the video.
Okay.
Okay, Ashley, do you have that link?
I do.
Okay.
Let's see. Sorry, just a minute. Can everyone see my screen?
It says you've started to share, but it doesn't show anything quite yet.
Now we can.
Okay.
Hello, and welcome to the online public meeting for the Fort Johnson Road and Secessionville Road Improvements Project. The purpose of this project is to improve safety at the intersection for all modes of transportation while improving traffic flow. Beneath this video, you will have the opportunity to scroll down and review the history, alternative designs, and the recommended design for this intersection. At the very bottom of the page, you will find a comment form. Please provide your questions and comments so the design team can incorporate them into the final design. The county first recognized the need to address this intersection in 2011, when the Charleston County Transportation Committee approved funding to begin the design process for improvements at the intersection. In 2012, a traffic analysis revealed little relief could be provided to the traffic congestion at the intersection, the types of improvements the county could complete without right-of-way acquisition. An additional study completed in 2016 by the South Carolina Department of Transportation concluded that anticipated increase in traffic at this intersection may meet the requirements for a traffic signal by the year 2020. In 2017, the county identified and dedicated funding from the 2016 Transportation Sales Tax for the Secessionville Road and Fort Johnson Road Intersection Improvements Project. Since then, the county has completed an analysis of the intersection to come up with a recommended alternative. You can view a complete history of this project by scrolling through the public meeting page beneath the video. The project team analyzed several factors to determine which alternatives would best meet the purpose of this project. These factors included how much right-of-way would you need, how many grand live oak trees would be impacted, would any properties need to be relocated, how much would construction cost, and what kind of level of service would it provide? Level of service, or LOS, is a scale based on 6 levels from A to F, with A and B considered the best traffic conditions, C and D considered acceptable, and E and F considered failing. For the intersection of Fort Johnson Road and Successionville Road, the county recommends alternative 1, the installation of a traffic signal and turn lanes. This alternative improves safety, while requiring the least amount of right-of-way, impacts the least amount of grand live oak trees, and provides the best level of service. You can view the other alternatives considered under Alternative Analysis by scrolling through the public meeting page beneath the video. Beneath the alternatives, you will find a list of answers to frequently asked questions. Your feedback is important to us. Please send us questions or comments by filling out the public comment form at the bottom of the meeting page. Thank you for taking the time to review our recommendations for the Fort Johnson Road and Successionville Road Intersection Improvements Project.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
I can.
Okay, so if you go to our website, you can see all the alternatives. We've gotten about 60 comments so far. We're leaving it open till the end of August, so help get the word out. And I know Councilwoman Jackson, you did give me a point of contact. We have hard copies for those that do not have website access. So we're trying to get the word out as best as possible, and any help would be very much appreciated. And I'll say soon we'll be doing the same thing for the Camp of Fort Johnson intersection improvement. I'd say in about a month or so, you'll see a similar public online meeting for those intersection improvements as well. And with that being said, I also gave Ashley a list of all the James Island projects that we're working on and status updates, so she can email that to y'all. And if y'all have any questions, feel free to contact us.
Deborah, I have a question
Sure.
for either you or Councilwoman Honeycutt. Concerned very much about school starting back with Central Park and Riverland Drive still not addressed and not on the agenda. So what is going on there?
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you, if you want to.
I'm sorry, were you, Councilwoman Honeycutt, were you answering her? I'm sorry.
I'll let you tell her where the project is, and I'll tell her where the council action is.
Okay, so we did put it on the agenda for March, and our county administrator pulled it because of COVID-19. They wanted the public to come and provide comments. And I can tell you, Mr. Blake even emailed us recently and said, I certainly hope y'all wouldn't try to meet on this without the public being able to come and speak and for them to hear our voices. So until the county administrator puts it back on the agenda, I can't do anything. But we, like I said, citizens have spoken or sent emails saying that they would prefer it not happen, why they don't feel safe coming and meeting in person about it.
It told me the same thing, but they are concerned because of the delay between March and now, something that could have actually gone on the agenda so that we could have a stoplight if that's the direction that council still intends to proceed, which is what it seemed like at the last meeting. The only reason they want to come now is they're concerned that there's some backpedaling because we've not been able to get it on the agenda after asking multiple times. So you're saying that because Mr. Blake, because I can certainly get him to withdraw that request because he said he wanted the public to be able to come there. That's the reason that the chairman has not put it on the agenda?
I know he is one. I don't know if there have been others, but I have copied me on his email saying he did not feel safe. So again, that went to the Christians that work in the county for county council and the county administrator. So until the county administrator puts it back on the agenda, I can't do anything. It has been taken off until further notice, is all I've been told.
Okay.
I've been told it does require council action to even consider the DOT plan that has been put forth. So we have to vote to eat.
Jenny, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
That's okay. County council has to actually vote and take an action as to whether or not we can even proceed with the DOT proposal. So we can't take we're not in a position to take an up or down vote on that light anyway at this time.
So what are you saying? You're saying that county council has to vote to put it on the agenda, so the chairman can't do it?
No, ma'am. I'm saying that the light that you're saying that everyone supports can't even go on the agenda yet because it has to go back to our transportation staff for evaluation. That requires a vote.
Okay, then how long until we're going to get a vote to take it back to transportation staff? Because we know we're coming up on an election. So that could flip the votes. So in this area, come September 7th or whenever school's going to start, we're all going to be screamed at again. So what's the delay? What's the process? How does council even start taking these votes to decide whether it's going to go onto the transportation department or wherever?
Again, the public has said they want to be at those meetings and that they've asked us not to put it on the agenda until we have a full open meeting where everyone that wants to can attend and speak. That's what they, I don't know.
I assume the public would be foyable. So Devery, if you don't mind, since I assume that you're getting this information, would you mind sending me the members of the public? Because if they are the folks that live right there, I'm sure that I can get them on board.
Okay, and like I said, you would have to also get, it would be up to the county administrator, Mr. Tootin, to put it back on the agenda. He's the one that pulled it when COVID happened, so that would be your point of contact.
Mr. Tootin and not Mr. Summey.
Well, Mr. Summey too, I'm sure you could talk to, but yes, Mr. Tootin is my boss's boss's boss, so.
Okay, well, thank you, appreciate it. Sorry to interrupt.
Any more questions?
I guess not.
I had one comment.
Actually,
No.
I'm sorry, this is the stoplight.
I guess she's asking where you guys are talking about. Explain to her. what you're talking about.
Central Riverland Drive, but everybody needs to mute. Central Park and Riverland Drive.
Okay, Bill, you've got something to say?
I'm really happy that we've made a lot of progress on the Secessionville Road, Fort Johnson Road project. And I just wanted to remind at least the old timers of this group that this body has gone on record more than once in favor of making improvements at that. And it's finally moving forward. And, it's really great that we're making this progress.
And Camp and Fort Johnson will be right behind it. So those are excellent.
Garrett, go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is an intersection that's in the city, the intersection of Fort Johnson and Folly Road. Are there any plans to do any work on that intersection with respect to safety?
I think Councilwoman Honeycutt, she's on the agenda to later talk about county sales tax projects, but we did just get approved funding for improved bicycle and pedestrian access at that intersection.
Very good. Thank you.
And DOT is getting, if they haven't already, the folks that opened the Publix and built that entire mall area, they have to pay for traffic light study. I know I don't know if the rest of you have, but I had a lot of people complaining that we needed more arrow time, or in some directions we needed any arrow time, even though the arrows were there, they just were not showing. So if that hadn't been done already, it will come up. And so then the study will reflect whether we need more time on the arrows and that kind of thing.
Anyone else? All right, well, let's move on to the next agenda item. Is Dan Bowles here? He had some question about underground power lines. I guess he's not here. We'll skip that. And we want to go to Chris Wanamaker, Grimble Road Drainage Project. I'm very interested in this. I'm sure Alan is too, because this affects the James Island PSD greatly. Is Chris here?
Chris and Brett are both here, and they should be joining us in just a second.
Hey, Ashley, this is Brett. Are you, can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, okay. Do you have those slides that I sent earlier?
I do, and I'm sharing my screen now.
Okay, okay. I just don't see them, but I believe you. So, okay, okay. There we are. I'll start. So anyway, this is the Grimble Road Drainage project. The first slide shows more of what Thomas and Hutton put together last year. They completed the drainage study, all of James Island, and basically broke it up into 30 different basins. The red basins are it's basically the ranking of these basins, and most of y'all are familiar with that. The ones are the ones that are in more of a need of improvement, or they're ranked higher, and of course the green ones. But the one we're looking at is down there toward the end, the Signal Point Basin, that one, correct? And as you can see, it's ranked number 17. Probably could have gotten a little higher rating if more people were there. The rankings were based on, the size, the soils, land use, elevations, and even work order requests. So Grimble Road has been in need for repair, or actually the drainage improvements under the Grimble Road for a good while. But like I said, it should have probably gotten a higher ranking. And as far as if you want to go to the second slide, it kind of focuses in on that basin itself. As you can see, the upper end is the Signal Point, where the public services exist, and a lot of that water, of course, comes on down to the south, where the James Island School is. There's a 5-acre pond there, and just downstream of that pond is where we'll be concentrating our efforts. There are 2 culverts now that one is functioning okay, the other one has been compromised or crushed. But these improvements that we're looking at now is one phase of 3, and there's 3 components to what we're working on now. And I kind of expound on that. It's about, overall though, we got about a 400-acre basin, and about 200 acres is going through that pond at the James Island Elementary School. So one of the components is to lower that elevation of that pond about 1 foot. And is everyone hearing me?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I just, and so what that'll do, that'll delay a lot of the water from trying to get under Grimble Road at the same time. So we think that will be a big benefit. And then right there, just south of the pond, of course, is where we'll be putting in a triple 48. And again, just south of that, the South Grimble Road extension, some people call it Grimble Farm Lane. Those triple 48s will be implemented in there as well. So those 3 things are a big part of what needs to go on, is happening now. We've got the bids. We're hoping to get bids out, returned to us, actually out for bid in the next couple of weeks. So construction hopefully starting next, later this fall. The third slide It basically shows a variation of topography. The green areas are the high points, the magenta or the purple are the low points. That lower, as you can see, it's not a lot of change in elevation, all the blue and cyan. It's basically a flat area. Soils aren't that bad. It's just a high water table. So we've getting flooding just north of Grimble Road into that Nathaniel area a good bit. When we have back-to-back storms, those soils just can't, they just don't have the capacity to absorb that much water when you've got a high water table right there. So that's the reason for what we're having to do. The fourth slide is basically where most of the construction is going to be, where a lot of utilities are going to be, and it's going to probably take the most time. Again, we're replacing the culverts on that south on that dirt road as well, but that red dot reflects where we'll be replacing, relocating a force main, a water main, and AT&T has some fiber optics that will probably delay, not delay, but it just be more involved at that location. So of course that would probably involve shutting that road down. If you want to back up to the screen before that, it shows more Grimble Road in its entirety. Thankfully, Grimble Road is a loop road, and where we're working is at a remote end of a loop road. So it should not affect a lot of traffic in that area. It will probably affect the school traffic, but they will probably need to, from the north end of James Island, just stay on Folly Road and access from South Grimble Road, but should not be any access to the school will not be compromised from these efforts. And I believe that's all. It's over a $500,000 project funded by the Charleston County Stormwater Program. If there's any questions. Does anyone have any questions?
That force main, is that a sewer line?
It is.
Is it mine?
It's a yes. We're having to lower it, and then, like I said, what we're dealing with now is a lot is 348. So we'll be dipping down under those 48s, and with ample clearance, and then coming back up. Yeah.
Are you paying for it, or do we have to pay for it?
We're paying for it.
Oh, okay. All right.
I have an additional question. How long is you expecting the road to be shut down when you do it?
At least 2 months.
And is this shutdown planned during a future school year, or is it going to be during the summer?
We tried to get it this summer, but we just couldn't get DOT to happy. So it's going to be late this fall. Like, again, it should not affect access to the school at all. Like I said, if anything, it will probably keep that school traffic on the north and west side of James Island to stay on Folly and then come down South Grimble Road.
I'm just thinking about the school bus routes and if there are any kids that are going to be picked up between there and Folly Road.
Right. Yeah, sure. Like I said, because it's a remote end of a loop road, it should really minimize a lot of, local congestion. I mean, adverse effects, really.
Okay, looking at the other side of it, since that is a PSD force main, what kind of diversion plans, or is that going to stay in active use until the triple is completed, or how is this going to work?
Yeah, we're leaving that up to the contractor. Will put together a plan. He'll be coordinating with PSD on those.
Okay, anyone else got any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead, Garrett. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just curious what the process was in coming up with the project. While I appreciate the county's willingness to help us with drainage issues on James Island, the lower priority of a number 17 ranking, I find a little bit troubling when we have other areas of the island with much greater need. And I'm just wondering what the process was that you went through to come up with this project and to identify it as immediate concern.
Sure, sure. There's been a couple of studies. WES did one 2 years ago, and we've had a lot of reports also that Grimble Road basically gets inundated. It gets breached. Has been breached several times. We've had owners on the little subdivision to the south who say it's coming halfway up on the tires of vehicles navigating Grimble Road. So Nathaniel area is definitely a choke point. There's a 136-inch pipe that's functioning well now, but we really need 348s to really address those higher storms. As we know, we're getting more intense storms, and it's been something that's been on the books for on the back burner for a long, long time, actually.
Yes, I appreciate that, but by the same token, water on a roadway is different than water in a home. And we have a lot of homes that are being inundated on James Island. And my concern is that we're not necessarily putting all of the resources we need into preventing flooding in neighborhoods. So we have red areas in our James Island stormwater plan that we're working to address, and other higher priority areas that may need attention that actually affect more residents than, say, this area. And I guess that's what I'm wondering about the prioritization of this over other more residential areas of the island.
Sure. I don't have a good answer except for the fact that this involves a lot of county property. I mean, I don't want to, it's got some city property into it, but it's about 60% Charleston County. So we're trying to hit those areas.
Excuse me, can I speak to this? The island-wide delineation was completed after the specific drainage study for the Signal Point Road area. The Signal Point Road drainage study was done before the island-wide drainage study. And this project was worked on and in progress before the entire prioritization was developed only a year ago. I mean, it was just last fall that prioritization even existed. And so rather than stop all the projects that we're working on in the middle of the road and start over on new projects, I think the judgment of most local government officials has been we need to move forward. Also, what I was going to ask separately than explaining how this fits in with the prioritization that's developed after this project was well on the way was how is this going to address the flooding on Signal Point Road and on Folly Road? So when we've had rain events, we get bad flooding on Folly Road near Signal Point Road and then down Signal Point Road. And my understanding of stormwater management is that you go from the outfall up. And so in order to address the flooding problem we have at Signal Point and on Folly Road, we need to fix this downstream problem. You know, that's my understanding. And so this was a serious problem on James Island that was identified 5 years ago, 6 years ago. It's been going on for a really long time. The county and the city together worked on a detailed drainage study for this basin. And independently and before we did the island-wide delineation. And then after all that, we did the island-wide delineation. Now, if we had done the island-wide delineation a decade ago, you know, maybe we would be working somewhere else, but it wasn't. Instead, what happened was specific basins were worked on. This one and also the Central Park Basin were worked on before we even did the delineation and identified the James Island Creek Basin as the #1 priority. That's the explanation. And then my question for Brett is, how does this address the drainage problems at Signal Point and Folly, which I thought was the key problem here?
Yeah, good points, Mayor, and you're correct. This is supposed to help relieve a lot of that. We every time it rains, we get calls from PSD because it floods. So you're right. This is supposed will need to happen before we can make those improvements upstream, heading towards Signal Point. But another thing that helps this is the fact of us lowering this pond elevation about a foot is going to create a little more relief to let that water get from Signal Point here. Right now, the canal from this pond to Signal Point is at 0.001%, or it's just flat. So this will help give us a little more relief to get that water from Signal Point to this destination and help relieve Signal Point, those upper areas.
Right, and none of the other projects are being missed right now. Everything's being looked at. This one was just on the books for so long.
Any other questions?
Brett, I just saw a comment online, and I'm not sure if you addressed it, but when you say triple 48s, are you talking about 3 48-inch culverts?
Right.
Size of the pipe?
Yep. They're each going to be 56 in length. But there'll be 3 runs of them.
I know that this is a kind of a offshoot on it, but the Central Park and the Signal Point, how soon after that are we planning on doing something with that, since this will improve the drainage coming out from that direction?
I'm not able to speak on that, I don't think.
Say that again, Alan?
Well, since he said that this is a downstream from the Signal Point, and looking at the map, Signal Point is what, number 2, with Central Park being number 1 or something like that. That still leaves the 2 top problem children that need to be addressed. And I was just trying to find out how soon after this is completed, or from this point, are we going to be tackling those other 2 jobs?
You're talking about the improvements in this basin that we're starting downstream, and how soon are the upstream improvements?
How soon are they going to be tackled? That for the Signal Point, but then we still have the Central Park that needs to be tackled in a huge need on that.
Right. So this is the major downstream portion that has got to be done first. We got to get it done and then reevaluate and take another look then. I'm not sure how to answer that one. It's just time will tell, and so will the results of this improvement.
Commissioner, I think that we have the Central Park Basin recommendations report on the agenda tonight. So we'll hear a lot more about the study that's been done over the last year and a half on Central Park Basin, the whole basin.
Yeah, the way I understand it, there'll be 2 different watersheds that we're talking about.
Okay. Is that okay?
Anything else?
Chairman Woolsey, I don't have another question for our Signal Point Road topic, but I think that there are maybe some people from the public who have now signed in to speak. So do you think we could circle back and listen to the public comments before we keep going?
I thought the public comments would be written only. What are we doing, Ashley?
No, we can allow them to speak via Zoom.
We advertised they would be able to speak if they signed on tonight.
All right, Ashley, did you have anybody signed up?
I'm looking through them now. Let's see.
Also remind anybody who speaks, we're only speaking right this minute about Grimble Road drainage projects, not any other drainage projects that we will be getting to in a few minutes.
Chairman Woolsey, I had someone with their hand up, but it looks like that person has put their hand down. So I would just maybe reiterate for anyone that they need to send me a message via chat or raise their hand if they'd like to speak.
Okay, thank you. It's my mistake. I thought we did have people who wanted to make a public comment in general under the public comments agenda section. So I apologize.
Yeah, no, it looks like a gentleman who had his hand up with a question for public comment. It was already answered by one of the panelists. So.
So we're going to move on to Central Park?
Chairman, I think we're ready to move on to Central Park.
Okay, next up is Chris Wanamaker and Matt Fountain. And go ahead on the Central Park Basin Drainage Improvement Evaluation.
Go ahead, Matt. There. Hey, Matt.
He's joining. Give him just 1 minute.
Okay, there we go. Appreciate it. Thanks for promoting me up to the panelist, Ashley, so I can move this one aside. I'll let's see. Ashley, it looks like you've got screen sharing disabled. Okay, you're gonna do the presentation. That'll work.
Oh, actually, I can let you drive if that's easier, Matt.
Anything you prefer is fine with me.
All right. Well, I guess
I'm getting really good at saying next slide on Zoom meetings, but it's always a little awkward.
Okay, you're able to share now.
All right, let's see if I can do it correctly now. Okay, so this is a update presentation on the Central Park Basin, our drainage improvement evaluation. I'm going to go through just an overview of what we're going to present on. It'll be a pretty brief presentation, but we'll talk a little bit about the county, city, and DOT collaboration. We're going to talk about the evaluation review we've done to date, look at existing conditions versus potential improved conditions on the conceptual improvements we've come up with, and we'll break into talking about, well, what are those conceptual improvements in a little bit more detail. They're still conceptual at this point, so it's not quite like the signal point where we can say, here's exactly the pipe size and here exactly how they'll be set. It's more still a modeling perspective of where we need to increase capacity and conveyance, but it does provide quite a bit of information on what we're looking at. Then we're going to talk a little bit about, while the evaluation is important and the improvements are important, so is how we handle stormwater development reviews in the basin as we continue to see development in this basin. So we'll talk about how that has evolved, and then give a little more detail on what the next steps are for how these projects would move forward. So collaboration, obviously this is something that the intergovernmental group is I think very interested in, and something that has been, I think, almost a case study on James Island for how all of our different governmental groups can work together. In this case, we're working between the county and the city, and to some extent SCDOT with a lot of the road crossings. The work we've done to date is a lot of data collection. We've had county surveyors do quite a bit of survey work through the area. We've had the city with our consultant AECOM doing visual surveys, taking some additional construction level survey, talking with residents obviously on flood concerns, benchmarking what flooding we've seen across the area. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done together, obviously, as we work through these projects. What we're doing currently is we're working on maintenance and rehabilitation of the system. That's something that's been going on for really a few years at this point, with improving some of the canals, improving some of the pipe situations in the neighborhoods, but that's still ongoing. Chris and I talk on probably a monthly basis about what we're working on next in the area. So that's something we'll probably see continuing for at least a couple more years. And then obviously the improvement evaluation, which we're talking about tonight. What are our recommendations for conceptual improvements moving into design across this basin to relieve the flooding that we see? Development reviews. This is something that the county and city have started doing when we each have, because so much of this kind of crisscrosses and mix mashes between all of our jurisdictions in this basin. We've been kind of collaboratively reviewing new developments with applicants, and that way it's not sort of, well, the more historic way was, if you go back far enough, was just the entity who was the permit holder, or the jurisdiction kind of reviewing without consideration for the other entity, since it's not technically part of the regulatory process. Then we moved to, well, kind of make sure that the applicant is talking to the other party, and now we've moved to a true kind of collaborative process, which I think is the right way to go with this. Special protection area designations, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but the city has designated this as a special protection area, the basin, which with our new stormwater manual that went in July 1st, applies a series of different requirements across this basin. And then for the future, obviously, we'll be working together on actually doing improvements, the design and the construction of the improvements we're talking about. So for reference, we move everybody out of the way. There we go. For the area we're talking about is generally bounded at the north on Maybank, coming to the south, Central Park Road. It actually goes a little bit south of Central Park Road. You can see on the bottom there is the EME apartments, James Allen Creek eventually tributaries into. On the right side, it's generally Folly, other than the kind of very northeastern portion of the basin, which has a different drainage area that drains out through Old Folly Road into the marsh. And then on the west, we're coming out through Howell, through Stephen, and into Woodland Shores on the west side. It's a mix of city, county, and messy DOT, as we talked about. So we went through model building at this point in the evaluation. That's pulling together data collection, looking at soils in the area, the different land use types, doing survey work, field reviews. We also incorporated in any of the planned developments that are in process in the communities. Incorporated all of that into the stormwater model. We met with residents, looked at flooding reports, photos, talked about localized issues that we needed to incorporate into the model, use that to calibrate and truth the model. And then we also did include storm surge scenarios and sea level rise scenarios into the model, because again, we want to make sure whatever improvements we're doing today still work in the next 50 years, that they don't basically become invalid if you get a storm, storm with a higher tide surge, or if you get a 2 feet of sea level rise as you move forward. Briefly, I'm going to talk about the way we do flood improvements. This can be a little complicated sometimes. There's sort of three major impacts of flooding when you're looking at neighborhood flooding. And this isn't like how flooding impacts you as a homeowner in terms of, is it property flooding, is it road flooding? Those are important considerations as well. But this is more the types of flooding we're looking at in conceptual model improvements. So there's the three areas we look at are kind of, what is your maximum depth? What's your severity of flooding, we would call it. How deep does the water get in the area? That's kind of the traditional way that people think about modeling for stormwater improvements, is what's the worst level of flooding you get to. But there's also duration of flooding. How long does it stay wet? It's one thing if you have 6 inches of water on your road and it lasts for 15 minutes. We've all kind of seen that in heavy thunderstorms. You almost see that on the interstate sometimes, but you can't have it last for 7 days and have people not be able to get in and out of their houses. And then there's also frequency of flooding. So that's again, if you have a hurricane, a major hurricane, and you get some minor flooding, that's one thing. If you have every afternoon thunderstorm creating minor flooding, that starts to be a real nuisance and challenge to quality of life. So these graphs on the right of the page kind of show how that works. So the two lines, the graph I should say on the left axis, it's sort of how deep the water gets. On the right axis, we're talking about time throughout the storm. The red is sort of like a pre-existing condition, and a green is an improved condition. So you can see on the top graph, the red and the green are not too dissimilar on maximum depth of flooding. I mean, there is an improvement in the green, certainly, not to be diminished. the big change in the green is how fast the water drains back out again, right? You're only seeing flooding for an hour or two rather than in the pre-condition where you're seeing 30 or 40 hours of flooding and really not much sign of improvement as you move down the chart. The bottom graph is sort of a similar approach, but you're seeing some decrease in peak flooding, quite a bit of decrease in peak flooding, and a significant decrease in duration. So that's something to talk about when we model it. I think duration frequently gets forgotten about because it's much harder to model for. We did model and look at duration as we went through this. So going to existing conditions, this is a 50% AEP. That's the annual exceedance probability. This is something I think engineers are trying to push as a descriptor of storms. A 50% annual exceedance probability means in any given year, you have a 50% chance for a bigger storm than this to occur. We used to call these 2-year storms. And I think people got very comfortable with the idea that, okay, these will only happen once every 2 years. The probability is sort of the new way the industry is going to say, well, no, I mean, you could have 15 of these in a year. It's just a lower probability to have 15 of them in a year. It's not a guarantee when you say a 2-year storm that you're only going to get one every 2 years. And certainly over the last 5 years, I'm sure everyone's seen the news and felt like, how many 100-year, 500-year, 50-year storms can you possibly have in a 5-year period? And again, that gets back to probabilities. So this is the storm that over a design period, you would generally see occurring generally once every 2 years. We have 50% chance any given year. We model it with surge and sea level rise to account for what will this look like in the next 50 years. And our storm surges are basically modeled at different intensities of surge corresponding to the return period of the storm event. So a 50% storm, again, this 2-year type storm will have a smaller surge than like a 100-year storm would have, which would have a bigger surge to reflect those return probabilities. It's a conservative way to do it in this case. So what you're seeing in the basin, the red is showing kind of your deepest flooding. The yellow is kind of your moderate flooding. Blue is sort of somewhat minimal flooding. And then if it's not colored, it's not flooded. It's important to note these are, at this point, the conceptual models are built off of nodes. They're built off of points. So it's not saying that these are the only places it could flood in the basin. These are saying where the modeling exists, this is where the modeling is showing flooding. So there could be localized ponds, there could be localized puddles that aren't incorporated in the model, but we're focusing on the primary conveyances, the ditches and the drainage systems through the neighborhood. So obviously, these smaller storms, still a big storm, but a relatively frequent storm, you're seeing some pretty heavy flooding across the basin, which I think we're all familiar with. Moving to a 4% annual exceedance probability. So again, 4% chance of being exceeded in every year. That means once every 25 years on average, you would have a storm like this. These are still pretty large storms in Charleston, but again, and Chris, you could chime in if I'm off, but this is somewhere around like 8 or 9 inches of rain. So it's not a massive storm for us. It's one that we do get relatively frequently. So here you're seeing the flooding become quite widespread. Almost all of the major conveyances are showing more than a foot of water creating flooding, with some of the minor conveyances still having pretty significant flooding as well. So what we've modeled for improvements are, again, looking at the priority projects we put together in these sort of more moderate size storms, which are still decent size storms, these 2-year or 50% annual exceedance probability storms with surge and sea level rise. You eliminate the majority of the flooding. You still do have a few localized pockets that are very hard to drain, but they do decrease significantly in duration, which is also what we've talked about, is trying to prioritize getting duration of flooding down as well. In the 4% storm, you do see a little bit more widespread flooding. Again, this is 4% is sort of what you would design for if you were building a completely new neighborhood from scratch. You would try to get it to where you were not seeing flooding, but you're still going from, this is the pre-existing condition to a post condition, showing significant reductions in maximum depth and really significant reductions in duration because the properties actually do drain out again. So to get into the improvements very briefly, we do have 4 priority areas for improvements that would make the kind of the biggest drainage improvement for the investment in the basin. Area 1, this is Central Park Road. The EME apartments are on the bottom there in the bottom right of the screen. You can see the Fleming Woods neighborhood in the top left. The primary canal there runs kind of between Flint Street and Wimbledon is the blue line. The blue lines show either existing or new drainage and based on the labeling, where the red shows pipe upsizing or box culvert installation. So you can see that we're basically in area 1 proposing to do some improvements. to the pipes under Central Park Road. I think that will surprise no one that that's a major constriction point. Improvements with box culverts under the EME apartment access road, which obviously is downstream from that Central Park Road. New box culvert improvements under Riley Road downstream, and then adding in check valves to try to prevent the tidal flow from coming in and basically causing complete reduction of storage through the area. We're also showing another improvement basically on the backside of Fleming Woods, draining out across Central Park Road, adding improved pipe sizes in there with check valves to help bring some of that water and give it another way to get into the creek eventually. And then let's see, move to area number 2. Area number 2 is sort of moving north and upstream of area number 1. This is kind of coming further up into the Marlboro and Cross Creek communities to the north. This is primarily looking at improvements to and the yellow highlighting sort of shows what's being talked about as area 2. All of the improvements are shown on the map, but the yellow is sort of the area 2 improvements. So this is primarily improvements to the actual canal and some of the side ditches that flow into the canal to improve that conveyance and improve that storage. Area 3 then is moving to the east into the Laurel Park neighborhood. This is looking at making flow capacity improvements and some pipe improvements in the roadside ditch system, but also looking at potentially adding an additional outfall under Central Park Road or down Central Park Road to bring water again further into the canal at a different location instead of bringing it all through what's known as kind of the Central Park cluster property, whereas as it flows now. So this would give multiple routes for the water to get out of this neighborhood and help. That's one of the things that helps with the duration, is not trying to bring all of the water through the same constriction point throughout the rainstorm. Area 4 now moves us over into the kind of Howell Avenue, Stephan, Fleming Road side of the basin. This one, the improvements are a little more complex, as the exact improvements are not as obvious on this situation. We all know there's serious constriction in terms of disconnection in conveyance. The ditches do not actually all flow together as one clean ditch to an outfall. There's good sections of ditch, but then ditch will disappear and there will be just open ground, or there might be a very small ditch that prevents the water from getting out. So what AECOM has shown is basically reconnecting those ditches, and there's a number of different ways to do that, and that's where there's some flexibility in the final design depending on property acquisition and some of the costs. But what they're showing is basically taking a connection improvement at Forest Lane and bringing that water over to the canal that the county has kind of dug off of Hollings Road, bringing it down to the lake system, the old borrow pit system, and then again adding box culverts and check dams under Central Park Road to help that water get out as well of the basin. There's also a little bit of storage being considered based on some plans on the northern part of the basin to help hold some of the water until it can find its way out. So moving over to development reviews briefly. The biggest changes here are taking a regional approach to stormwater standards, saying that when you do a new development, you can't look at just kind of what's the impact on your own property that you're developing. You need to basically do a basin-wide study. And the advantage to us here is we now have a basin-wide model. So we can actually, and we do in this case, provide data to developers saying, here are the actual flood situations you have to design for what capacity these canals have to receive water, how they behave in different storm events, and what you need to do in order to demonstrate no negative impact. We also make developers obviously consider flood potential for the property. That's if they fill low-lying areas and displace water, if they create more volume of water, the new stormwater regulations with the special protection area designation basically change the requirements for new developers to say that you have to not add any more volume of water into the system over a storm event, not just the old regulations, which are you can't add water faster than you did at the fastest moment pre-development. We can talk about that more if people have questions, but I think that's one we've talked about quite a bit. We also look at detention time because we have the basin-wide model. We do look at easement needs as new developments come in now, again, in that basin approach. And we have assigned a special protection area at the city for the Central Park Basin, the entire basin. So next steps, obviously these are somewhat funding dependent, but in the next year, we'll look to move, in the next 12 months, we'll look to move into our initial design work on the selected improvements. This obviously takes some coordination between the city and the county and DOT, as it involves all of our infrastructure through this area. That We'll then shift into the year after that, finalizing construction plans, documents, going through permitting. Much of this will involve Army Corps of Engineer permitting, which is generally a 1 to 2 year process. So that's where a lot of that time frame comes in. Closing out those permits, being able to go to bid, and then working on construction. And the construction is somewhat phased, as you have to start at the downstream end and work your way upstream, whether you build it as a single project or as multiple projects. And that generally would be a 2 to 5 year time frame for all of the constructions to occur. So some of this is fund independent. The city does have funding available to get into design, into the design work in the basin. So I think we'll be able to keep moving on our schedule and keep things moving along pretty well at this point. So at that point, if we have any questions, I'm happy to run back through the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Matt. Any questions?
Chairman, it's Carol Jackson.
Yeah, go ahead, Carol.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate Matt putting this together all in one piece in terms of trying to marry existing conditions with the now improvements that have been evaluated over this long period of time. I think that a point that we should make as elected officials and representatives of the improvements that we want to do is this is a one-stop a presentation that we thought would be best made during COVID at a holistic meeting like this with the Intergovernmental Council. But we are trying to figure out with Matt's coordination where the different areas, the neighborhoods that make up the different areas that he showed on the improvements plan, where we could actually bring the same study and talk about it in a little more detail with the people who are in each of those areas. So I think that should be coordinated with the beginning of any sort of design. Matt, do you have any little timeline you could at least ballpark for the residents of the areas so that we're not all anxious about making plans without being able to ask more detailed questions?
Yeah, so when we talk about design, typically we're kind of looking at 2 phases of design. There's what was normally called like preliminary design, which is finalizing your construction level survey, building out your plans for permits. And then you have final design, which is drafting your construction drawings, putting together your specification books, that kind of thing. The preliminary design work, a big part of that is that discussion with the neighborhoods, because that's where you're moving from a model where you kind of show on a computer that this is an area where we could improve drainage or improve flow, to actually figuring out, well, what's it going to look like as we build it? So the preliminary stage typically has an early outreach meeting, like a 30% design, where you start to say, here's where we're looking at the improvements, here's what we're thinking they would look like, what are the priorities of the neighborhoods, and then kind of a final, more of like a final outreach meeting to sort of more present, here is the details and here's what we did put together based on your input. So there's not surprises as we get into permitting and discussion. But that, I think you would normally, some of this again depends on how fast the material moves through council and with some of the cooperative agreements between the city and the county and DOT and how we set those up. But I would think we'd be well into that part and starting to talk to the neighbors about here is what some of the construction will actually look like. Late in the calendar year is what I would think.
And maybe we could have sort of a preliminary Zoom that could be questions and answers for those same area residents. Will we know, or do we already have an understanding of the any easements that we're going to have to obtain?
So that part, the specifics of how the easements will look, that side is still something you get into in preliminary engineering normally. I think at this point we would be happy, and like you had mentioned, we had already talked about pre-COVID of trying to set up, we could still do it by Zoom, some sort of almost breakout meetings with individual groups of residents from the 4 different areas, the work areas, to say, here's what the model is showing and here's what that means and what it might look like. And here's when we will come back to you with more detail and more information on the kind of the final presentation of what that needs. And the priorities are kind of the big thing. We may say this is somewhere we feel that the canal needs to be widened and stabilized, and the residents may have, if you live on a canal, you may have very strong feelings about what that stabilization looks like. what the impacts are, that we may be able to incorporate some of that into the project. It depends always, certainly. Or things like culverts are a little more straightforward, and that tends to be, okay, we need to know what the traffic considerations are, we need to have some input from the residents, but the engineering side is a little cleaner. So I think the breakout meetings would be good to talk about the model, and then follow up with kind of more detailed prioritization and meetings later in the year when we get into preliminary design.
So, I'm sorry, this fall for the early meetings that you're referring to.
I think the early meetings, I mean, we'd be able to do those in the next, over the next month or so. It's at this point, we're ready to talk about it. It's just trying to get the actual, pre-COVID, it was a lot easier to do all those things. COVID, it's a little harder, but I think we can certainly try to get some of those set up. It's more just the advertisement and the discussion and having people be aware that they're out there. So yeah, I'd say in the next month, we could get those set up.
I think we can volunteer to help you do that, Matt. So thank you very much.
Sure.
Matt, somebody I believe asked a question what a check valve is. It's a one-way flow valve. Is that correct?
Yes, yeah, that's exactly right. So a check valve lets water flow out, but not in. So when the tide comes up, basically, the tide water wouldn't be able to flow in and fill up the canal. But when there's rainwater behind the check valve, it can still flow out. And these are a little more complicated than that. These would probably be like muted check valves or low flow check valves, because you're working in more environmentally sensitive areas where you might need some salt water coming in to keep the ecology consistent. But that's the principles for a check valve.
I think Dr. Rivas asked where the check valve would be. Are these on the ones that are on the double culvert under Central Park?
Yeah, so let me jump back in the presentation, the check valves. So generally, the main check valves you're seeing proposed, at least, are Riley Road is one of the major check valve locations that's proposed, because that would give you the most possible storage upstream. There's likely to be some secondary check valves at areas where there's a transition from like a salt marsh environment into a freshwater environment. Those are a different permitting consideration, and you'd be able to provide more storage in that situation without having that muted impact or that low flow impact. So the fine details will be finalized in the preliminary engineering, but the initial plan is something like the area of Riley Road would be kind of your main check valve, and then a couple of additional ones in the upstream.
Madam Chair,
Also,
may I?
oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Matt, if I may ask a question, and you mentioned that when we have these soon to be subsequent meetings to go into more detail, you would talk about prioritization. And well, I guess first I wanted to say this is really a great collaboration between the city and the county and the DOT. So I want to thank everybody who's involved and recognize this is an important step of a multi-step process. And but recognize that people are a little frustrated wanting to get something done. And I would just ask if when you prioritize things, that you particularly think of things that you might break out into a simpler, faster project, if in fact they bring some benefit to the whole system and can be done quicker, as opposed to being part of, a bigger project. For example, maybe the check valve at Riley Road really brings some relief to that whole system, so to speak. And if we could break that out and do it as a separate, easier project, I know permitting probably takes the same amount of time or close to it, but just to identify a priority actions here that could bring quicker benefit and try to move forward on those. So maybe you don't have a response, but that would be my request.
No, Mary, that makes sense. You're right that the permitting, the downside is that some of these Area 1 improvements are sort of you need to do before you could do the Area 2 or Area 3 improvements. And the Area 1 improvements are probably the most difficult permitting improvements, so they will kick that time frame in. But from a funding situation, certainly Area 1 will still provide real benefits to Areas 2 and 3. So that's sort of where you have to start from prioritizing things. Area 4 sort of is its own standalone area. And that's one that we've already done some work with the county, and there's some considerations with different developers out there. So there are options on that one as well for moving it forward a little bit faster, hopefully. So that, I agree that it's important not to get stuck not doing anything because we're trying to do everything.
Right. That's a good way to say what I was trying to express. Thank you.
Matt, for the people listening, can you introduce yourself and tell us who you work for and where people can reach you and where they can find a copy of this PowerPoint?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Matthew Fountain. I'm the Stormwater Director for the City of Charleston. There we go. There's my email address. We'll certainly put this PowerPoint on our website, and we can send it to Ashley or Mayor Woolsey. If you're interested, we can certainly send it to the town as well to have it available on the town site, since I know you all are generous in hosting a lot of this meeting and the efforts for this meeting. But we'll put it on the city website certainly and get it over to the town as well.
Go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, Kathy, I just want to mention this kind of leads into the next topic, but I know that DOT actually asked for CTC funding for the culverts under Central Park Road. So to Dr. Rivas's question, she asked how soon will larger culverts be placed, and that will depend on the funding approval and getting that done. So I don't know the timeline, but I do know that request has been made, so it's in the pipeline.
Yeah, and this was also thank you, Councilman Honeycutt. And this project was also the city's #1 CTC request this year. So there's certainly interest in getting this work done and moving it forward.
Ashley, do we have any other public comments on this portion here?
Let me look. I don't see anyone with their hand raised.
Well, thank you. Well, we'll go on to, thank you, Matt, and we'll go on to the next thing on the agenda, which is county sales tax, greenbelt funds, recent projects and awards. Who is going to be taking the lead on this one? Who put this on the agenda?
I'm happy to do it. I don't know if Ms. Johnson is on, Ashley. Ms. Johnson's on?
I don't see Ms. Johnson.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to talk to it. I'll take the greenbelts first. There were actually none on James Island this cycle. You'll recall we had Brantley Park in the last funding cycle. But there were some really good projects that I think people would want to know about. There was a great youth and recreation center that we helped purchase for the Edisto Island community recreation area. So that will be great for that community. The Ross Tract was a city project on Johns Island. So it'll increase the Johns Island Park space, which will be great. And it also means that there won't be homes that would otherwise go there. So it'll give that community some more green space. Isle of Palms is getting some boardwalks. There's also an interesting project that we hope will sort of tie into some drainage improvements over in the Church Creek area. So the Church Creek Park and Fire Station improvement, those were the major ones. As far as CTC funding goes,
You're on mute again. You're on mute.
I was holding down my keyboard, but then it moved my summary here. But anyway, the culvert on Central Park Road was a CTC request for county funds, as well as, and I think it was mentioned earlier, the Fort Johnson and Folly crosswalk enhancements. So that safety improvement, I think Cynthia may have asked about that, or Garrett asked for her because she was having trouble, but 20,000 was allocated with the 2021 allocation. So hopefully that'll result in some pretty significant improvements there. That's it.
Okay, thank you for that update there. Any comments, any questions? What's going on in the county or anything? Hearing none. Okay, next up is Carol Jackson, update on the J.I. Creek Water Quality Task Force kickoff activities. Something new there. Tell us about it, Carol.
Yes, thank you, Chairman Wilsey. And I'm happy to defer to Mayor Tecklenburg, who's actually the key sponsor. The James Island Creek Water Quality Task Force is a group of very similar to this, a cooperative effort by volunteer entities who are instrumental in not only managing systems that are already in the creek, like our public utilities, but also border all of the creek shorelines where our residents reside and our public comes and goes from their recreational activities. So we had a convening meeting. We were planning to do this in the spring. This task force is basically the outcome, a more holistic, hopefully, venture than just taking on the mandate that we have as the three jurisdictions, city, town, and county, to improve the water quality for the creek based on fecal matter toxins. And that is an official mandate now that has been placed on the jurisdictions by both DHEC and then essentially put forward to EPA. And now we have EPA's their authorization to do this. It's a 5-year program, and it's going to be Matt, I think, and Chris Wanamaker are going to speak to more of the details of how we're handling that part of it. But in terms of knowing that we're going to improve the water quality for basically human and pet activity toxins in the creek, we thought that it would be a much more beneficial, long-lasting program to have this water quality that ends up engaging citizens in their own understanding of tidal creeks and how we're all stewards of the future of our creeks and the health of our water, that impacts flora, fauna, and people. And then go on to address some of the more longstanding old infrastructure and things like that. So it's going to be an iterative process, and we're trying to make it as holistic and cooperative as possible. So we had our first convening meeting that the mayor brought us together by Zoom on June 30th. And we're having our next meeting on August 26th. The first convening meeting, we didn't advertise to the public because we didn't really know how it was going to go. We didn't have essentially, we don't have any authorization to take votes that would have FOIA responsibilities, sunshine laws, because we're not going to be spending money as a task force. We're going to be talking about things that then we will recommend to the funding jurisdictions. So I liken this very similarly to the way that the Rethink Folly Road Steering Committee operates. The Steering Committee for Rethink Folly Road vision implementation is a cooperative venture. And then if we have any recommendations about costing or things that are contracting responsibilities, the steering committee turns them over to the funding jurisdictions. So that's what will happen here. But I think it's a very exciting time. We are going to be reaching out to citizens and hoping that we get a lot of volunteers as we make plans for what we can do. Just you, me, and our neighbors to try to give a better creek quality to our kids and our grandkids. And I thought just to give you a flavor of who is going to be volunteering to cooperate and be part of this effort. And I just lost the sheet oh, here it is. So I just wanted to read the entities that are currently on the course. if anyone has any suggestions about another instrumental, entity, we'd love to hear. Currently, we have our mayors from City of Charleston and the town of James Island, Councilmember Honeycutt, because James Island Creek is almost 100% in her district. Senator Sen for the same reasons on the state side. I represent the city and Ross Appel has joined us, and we're hoping to ask Dudley Gregory to come in and be part of the program. We have several representatives from the James Island Public Service District, commissioners and staff. We have representatives from Charleston Water System. We have Denise Sanger, who represents South Carolina DNR. She's a living shoreline scientist. That's the way I like to talk about her. She's got a fancier title than that, but she is a very knowledgeable creek habitat scientist who's been studying our creek for decades. Kim Morganello is representing Clemson Cooperative, their Stormwater Conservation Coordinator, so better known as Clemson Extension. Andrew Wonderly, Charleston Waterkeeper. We all know what Waterkeeper does. They're currently the only entity that's testing other than our public service or our water utilities. Emily Sedso from the Coastal Conservation League. And then we have an appointee, a citizen appointee for the PSD, Mr. Blank. We have Patrick Moore, who's a citizen appointee from District 12. We're still hoping to have other citizen appointees from the other jurisdictions. And we have Brian Durham from Town of James Island, a citizen appointee. And we are going to invite members from the Charleston Soil and Water Conservation District before we have our next meeting. We're staffed by our three Public Works Directors, Stormwater and Public Works Directors, and County Stormwater Engineer, and anyone else that we're going to have to call on to make sure that we're as smart as we can be. We're learning a lot from Folly Beach in the way that they're handling a lot of the pollution, concerns that deal at the beach, but very similar to the rest of us. So thank you very much. It'll be August 26th. We will make it available to the public on Zoom, assuming that we can't meet in person at that in a month.
Councilmember Jackson.
Yes.
This is Sandy Sen. I might ask you to maybe inquire, or I can do it if you want me to, of Palmetto Pride. They are helping us get a pollution apparatus that will help get some of the plastics out of the water, and I think they would be a good addition. Also, we may want to consider someone in Mount Pleasant because they're already doing the same thing with Shem Creek. Just again, so we can have collaborative effort and learn from what they're doing, or they can learn from what we're doing.
Okay, thank you for the good suggestions.
Thanks.
Thank you for good suggestions.
So, Madam Chair, if I may add,
Go ahead.
you couldn't add much. You did a great job, Councilmember Jackson, of sharing what a collaborative effort this is, just with all those organizations. Our goal is to improve the water quality on James Island, and with all those great people working together, that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Anyone else have anything to say? We're just getting started on this, so we're just at the beginning of this project where we're working together. So we really don't have that much to report. But if anybody has any comments, you can make them now. We've got Matt and Chris and Mark Johnson coming up with the TMDL update, and you might want to explain to people what that stands for.
Sure. Okay. The TMDL is the total maximum daily load. And then what it is a mandated water quality aspect to MS4s. I'm sorry to use all the acronyms. Really is pretty bad. The stormwater programs, as most people know them, were actually built as a sediment erosion and pollution prevention program. It's now come to fruition that we have these TMDLs, which are tasked to us to reduce pollution in the runoff from non-point sources. And so as one of the first ones, other than Wando TMDL in Charleston, it gives way to new and innovative ideas of how we can really solve fecal coliform. And I think everybody knows what that is, the poop of it all. And it's a very difficult pollutant, but it is one of our main ones in Charleston. And it's a very important one because it's related to shellfish and having waterways swimmable and fishable. And that's really a lot of the heart of the non-point source runoff programs. But Ashley, would you make sure that Brett is also unmuted as well as Mark? Brett is actually going to lead this from Charleston County and work with the city and town to get all the documents and all the MS4 requirements together and make sure those are submitted for the county and town, of course, and the cities, of course, here and going to work with us. But they're welcome to use what we call the monitoring plan. You'll hear that talked about tonight. And it's just simply the obligations of the MS4s. And so I'll turn it over to Brett at this point, if you'd like.
And this is Brett. Am I unmuted?
We hear you.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, to pick up where Councilman Jackson left off, the TMDL was published in the fall of last year. It was approved by EPA January this year. So that basically is when the clock starts for us to start responding as contributing MS4s or municipalities, as Chris suggested. As contributing municipalities, we're to submit a monitoring plan within a year of that January date, and then actually start in our efforts commencing monitoring a year and a half from that date. So we've got till January to formulate a monitoring plan. We've got one drafted. I think we discussed it 3 weeks ago during the task force meeting, and it's more or less the consensus to adopt this same plan that we all, as well as the monitoring efforts to help mitigate the overall cost associated with the monitoring, as well as being able to share information received from the monitoring. So, and that would be just to help us to be more responsive in directing our resources. But we're still working on that, trying to tweak that, getting comment that we got back last week. I did touch base with Denise Sanger because I think she had a question at the end of our task meeting and she didn't have time to talk about it, but it was the fact of wondering why the monitoring plan suggests going after the two monitoring sites that Waterkeepers has currently testing. So to respond to that, we will be a lot more deliberate about the storms we're going after, making sure there's a 3-day dry spell before that, and trying to target those storms that are happening right around high tide, so that we're getting a reflectance of what's really coming off the land. And that's not what, not to downplay Waterkeepers. They've done a great job, and we're grateful for what they've done, but they were basically making those sample grabs the same day of the week, regardless of the rain, regardless of the tide cycle. So we're going to be a little more strategic in our efforts. We want to keep those two monitoring sites at the same location, but as we know, we want to do a little more, and we can do some additional dry weather screening. And also wanted to throw out I think there was a slide that I had as well, Ashley, if you want to put that up. It basically, as you know, are the two sites that we're looking at now. The James Island one is right at the Harbor View crossing of James Island Creek, And then the other site is the upland area right where Folly Road intersects the James Island Creek. The numbers seem to be a little more intense on the upper headwaters. It's you know, for whatever reason, you know, we don't get the dilution. We don't get the salinity that the harbor gets, but for various reasons, those numbers to the inland side on Folly Road are historically higher. So, but we wanted to keep those two monitoring sites for those reasons I gave you earlier. But like I said, and do additional dry weather screening. If you look at the southern area, there's Simpson Creek there. It picks up all of just about all of James Island. I'm sorry, the James Island Creek Basin. If you can see the black delineation, those are all basins that were reflected on the Thomas and Hutton drainage study they did last year. So, and then to the east, we've got the Dills Bluff drainage basin, and it comes and intercepts Simpson Creek as well. So anywhere in that area, Jim Isle Drive, and then even to the south, the subdivision there, we're hoping to get reach out to the community, people who live on that creek, to see if they would like to partner in these efforts, because that's what it's going to take, is to try to see really what's reflecting of the James Island area. And that's about Simpson Creek. It brings in, or it receives about 1,500 acres of the heart of James Island. So I think that's probably a more strategic location. We can do that in addition to what we have on the monitoring plan. And I think it will probably give us some higher number. It might give us higher numbers, but it also be what we want to find. I mean, I think if we don't do that, then, you know, we could, you know, indirectly waste more time, or not waste more time, but just, I think we want to see what's out there. And so I think we, you know, being a little more proactive in this, we'll see that. We are putting together a MOU we've got it currently drafted to address the cost sharing. And then we want to forward that to all the municipalities for their approval as well, so that we can, of course, share the information we're getting, and of course, monitoring. You know, we could, the sky's the limit, so we could do as much or little as we want, but we just want it to be directed by the task force. Any questions on that I can try to answer.
And Brett's saying we want to be strategic with what we plan to do. And that's what we're trying to do, is come up with a strategic plan that would help tell a story for us to how to tackle or pinpoint where the pollutant's coming from, and actually tell us some useful data. So that's what hopefully we can talk about even more at the next task force. You can tell we're very engaged in the weeds, and I'm sorry for that, but we're all about ideas right now. And like Brett said, the MOU is coming out soon. We tried to have it out by this meeting, but it will be in the next couple of days. We should have a draft out.
And Chris, just super high level, I guess at this point, we're finalizing the monitoring plan. We're figuring out the MOU between the city, county, and town, which we've got good drafts from most of our attorneys at this point. We're getting ready to start sampling for building our baselines. We'll initially focus on outreach about what residents can do to help reduce fecal coliform level with the subcommittees that we formed from our stakeholder task force, which were policy, outreach, and technical. So the outreach one working on the outreach component. That'll let us start work on our policy considerations for changing policy, and then continue to monitor and evaluate the impact of the work we're doing off of that baseline as we continue to try new things to reduce that pollutant load.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just, this is Mark, to chime in, just to get that 30,000 foot level again. You know, we're talking about doing strategic testing in more than 2 places and all like that, but for the sake of the TMDL and what gets presented to the state and then EPA, we're keeping it simple to those 2 specific spots. You know, that's the requirements, you know, being met. And beyond that, anything we do is great, but we don't need to lock ourselves into 50 places off the get-go when maybe, you we can only afford to do 2 right now, and we just add to it as we need to. Is that right, Brett?
Yeah, that's correct. I mean, anything we put in a monitoring plan, we're going to be responsible for, and we could easily be out of compliance if we don't do everything we suggest. So our plan is to, let's do what, and then the other reason, these two locations, we have good accessibility to those. We can hit the ground and easily accomplish that. We want to venture into more, but we just want to be able to make sure that we have everybody on board and that we do it in a systematic fashion. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any questions there? Like I said, we're just kind of getting started on this, and we'll have more as time comes. Ashley, we have any public comment or anything?
Yes, I have Miss Franny Henty with her hand raised. I've unmuted her.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad y'all are looking at this so thoroughly and in depth. And I've been asking everyone to look into this. And in the Central Park area, we've had the high TMD levels, James Island here. A couple of years back, I even saw red water in the James Island Creek, Ellis Creek, and I was glad to hear one of you gentlemen, I'm not sure whose name it was, but you had said that you were going to even do more in-depth testing than what the water keepers does. And and we've recently had our own private engineer do some studies on the flooding in the area. And so we know that with all the sewer overflows, it's obvious that the flooding and the sewer water has made a soup together here. And I just kind of wanted to go on the record to say that, would it be possible that we hold off approving development in this area until we are existing in an environment where we don't have the floodwaters and the sewer mixture? Could we just say pause development until we have a model that we know is working? I know that's a big question and you might not be able to answer it tonight, but there's just a couple of developments that seem like the taxpayers who's lived here for so long could maybe be thought about first before the developers make their pile of money and leave town or who knows what. But thank you for listening.
Anyone else, Ashley?
No, ma'am, that's all I see.
Well, I don't know what sewer overflow she's talking about because we haven't had one in over 9 months. The last one was before Christmas and we cleaned that up. And we are in the middle of a $2 million project to improve the pipes in that area, and it'll be online soon. And we're also stopping up our manhole covers so no more stormwater can get in our pipes and cause stormwater and sewage to get together.
And if I may, this is Sandy Sen. We all know Franny, and she's got her heart into this, and her entire neighborhood does. And I'm excited that we're getting those covers to be able to stop the infiltration of stormwater. But the problem is right now, stormwater has nowhere to go. And so I totally understand her concern. Even once we block up the sewer lines, we're still going to have stormwater. And then we've got a development going there that I think it's got some big L-shaped pipe that has some problems. Now, none of that is state controlled, it's local controlled. And I understand that the developer had his rights in place, but I certainly do hope that our stormwater department takes a long and hard look at their plan. And every developer should be willing to work with the community and try to do the right thing, even if it costs them 1 or 2 or 3 condos, so that they would at least be able to have an adequate system that's not going to basically overburden those smaller the neighborhoods that were in existence a long time before. So, I mean, I appreciate it though, Kathy, everything that JIPSD has done to try and get everything in shape there. I know that everything is going to come together eventually, but I do worry about the development until we do have everything together. Thanks.
Go ahead, Carol.
Just going to suggest that since we've started talking about what PSD is up to in terms of your upgrade and your improvements, that maybe you could make that the next report, and then we can end with planning, just so we have the continuity in what we're already talking about.
Okay, I guess I'm not. Well, the PSD has been working on several upgrade projects. The biggest one is a new pipeline that we've completed last year, running under the marsh from Central Park Road all the way to Plum Island. It's a bigger pipe, brand new pipe. It's 20 feet under the marsh and the roadway. Right now, what we're working on is pump station number 2. It's going to be good for another 20 years. It's costing us over $1 million, and it will be able to handle all the new developments with brand new pipes going to directly to Plum Island. Now, before pump station number 2, the old pump station had to pump to number 1 pump station, had to be pumped twice, which was costing us a lot of money to pump it twice, with much smaller and older pipes that ran through the Central Park neighborhoods. This new line is very direct and goes straight to the Plum Island. And because pump station number 1 is being rehabbed and downgraded because it doesn't have to carry as much load, and that's coming online. We've also working on 2 other pump stations that have just completed. One on Neighbors Drive and the one on Harbor View Drive have been upgraded, and they should be good for another 20 years too. We'll be doing a flow monitor in the Central Park Road to monitor what water is getting into our pipes and when it's getting into our pipes. And we're hiring 2 more wastewater employees this year to help monitor and to install those sewer overflow caps, so sewage won't be getting into the creek. We are very responsive. If anybody sees a leak in our pipe, we will go fix it right away. Our people are on call 24/7, and we have a hotline you can call. It's on our website. If you see a leak and you're not sure, just call us. We'll figure out whose leak it is, and we'll get our people there to clean up the mess and to repair it as soon as we can. That's what we're doing now, and I think the total budget for both of all those projects is over $2 million we're spending on it, and it's coming directly out of people's wastewater bill. That's where the money comes from. We have to borrow it, and we got to pay it out over the next 20 years or so. And but we have all the documents. Anybody wants to see it, and you can call our wastewater director, David Hoffman, if you have any questions about what's going on. Alan, do you have anything to add to that? Unmute yourself too, if you want to add something.
No, that's one of the most concise descriptions of what we're doing right now that I think I've heard from anybody. Thank you.
Could you just tell us where pump station 2 and pump station 1 are?
Okay, pump station 1 is right there on Harbor View Road where our big sign is. It's right at the entrance of Plum Island, right where you come off the connector bridge. You've seen we've done a lot of work in there and had to tunnel under the marsh through there. And they're doing some repair work in that area on the old pipe because they're still working on it. But if you go down Central Park Road, they built this huge pump station. It's up maybe 6 to 10 feet off the ground to prevent it from getting flooded. There's some temporary pipes there, and it's got a big generator, so if the power goes off, it'll still work. And that will it's much bigger pipes. I don't know what the numbers are, but that whole from almost up toward Riverland Terrace over to James Island County Park, that'll take care of all those neighborhoods in there. And so like I said, this project, these pipes will be good for another 20 years at least, and they can be easily, apparently they made it so they can upgrade it to the future if they have to put in bigger pumps or whatever. Any other questions? Alan? Okay, well that covers up, and then we go into the planning, city and town comprehensive planning opportunities for citizens to participate. Somebody, Ashley, who is supposed to be telling us about that?
All right, we have Christopher Morgan with the city. We also have Dan Frazier with Charleston County.
Hi, do you all want me to start? Christopher Morgan, this is Christopher Morgan with City of Charleston Planning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So the city is working on our state required 10-year complete rewrite of our comprehensive plan. We're calling it our new city plan. Of course, this is a very, very important and large undertaking, particularly to be done at a time that is so unusual as the times we're going through right now. But nevertheless, we are at our 10-year deadline and needing to get this done. So we are putting together this new plan, which, you know, even before we started in the process, we knew it was going to have a strong focus on water and stormwater and sea level rise and land use and their interrelationship, and then also on housing, because in the city of Charleston, we have a housing affordability issue going on. So to support this plan, normally we would have had a tremendous amount of out in-person engagement, but because of the virus and its continued level of infection rates, we are in a mode of virtual engagement. We've been doing some background work right now with our planning commission and some folks, but by late August through October, we will be doing in earnest a good bit of virtual engagement with areas all over the city. We will set times for various meetings, virtual meetings for folks from James Island, from Johns Island, from Cainhoy, from downtown, from West Ashley, all at different times during that period from late August to October. We will be having a city plan website that will have lots of information, not only about the engagement that's going on, but how we are undertaking this plan and what we're finding. And then we will also have within that website, a storyboard slideshow that will talk about some of the findings that we've had. And most importantly, an online survey that we will be asking anybody who has something to do with City of Charleston, be they citizens, be they people who drive through, be they people who, you know, travel here, tell us about, you know, some of the planning issues we'll be asking about in that survey. To help us undertake this plan in this, you know, rapid amount of time, we are working with the folks that many of you might know from the Dutch Dialogues efforts over the last couple of years. That's a engineering firm out of Louisiana, Wagner and Ball. They will be helping us with all our water and land use elements. And so they already come in with a tremendous amount of background information, but right now they're also learning about James Island. They had been working on Johns Island. They had been working West Ashley and on the peninsula, but they're learning very much about James Island and also the Cainhoy area. And there will be other opportunities where they will make presentations and have public interaction as well. We have a consultant called Community Data Platforms that's going to be helping us with housing data and diving into what it truly costs to rent in Charleston, what it truly costs to own a house in Charleston, and ways that we could potentially make that more affordable. consultants. We also have consultants helping us with the overall community engagement and devising how we're going to undertake this virtual engagement and helping us with our website, and also with the design of the plan documents and things like that. So our goal is that by the end of the year or early next year, we will have a draft of the plan that will trigger even more community engagement as we have something for people to react to. And we will be looking for more input during those times when the drafts are ready. But we are very interested in hearing from everybody. I will happily give my email address, which is morganc@charleston-sc.gov, or my phone number. You can call me on my cell number. It's 843-709-2328. If you've got things that you think we should be looking into and want more information about our planning process. But we're very excited about it. It's going to be a very, very important document for us, and we're looking forward to lots of input in it as well.
Go ahead, Garrett.
Thank you, Christopher. I appreciate this planning process. It's a wonderful opportunity for our residents to get involved. We're doing the same thing at the town right now, and we're not getting too much participation because of the COVID epidemic that we're in. My question is, the Mayor Tecklenburg, that is, has talked about the fact that we might go into a borough-specific type of planning process, wherein we could have some of the identity of some of our communities maintained. That is, something that's more peninsular could be maintained, James Island, Johns Island, and we could have some discrete ideas in the comprehensive plan that would afford those places maintaining some of their identity. So rather than a one-size-fits-all urban growth boundary versus not urban growth boundary model, it would be nice to maybe take into account some of the things that make Johns Island different from James Island, different from Peninsular Charleston. Is there going to be any kind of an effort to engage in that type of planning process and identify some of those possibilities?
Well, we definitely are looking at each area as a unique entity, and we're looking at the lay of the land. We're looking at, what the issues are in those particular areas, and the plan will have recommendations for each area as per, those unique attributes. But as we go through time, of course, we already have certain documents like our Rethink Folly Road plan that deal with site-specific areas. We're working together with the county on Maybank overlays. That doesn't really relate as much to our comprehensive plan, but it does show how we're looking in particular and doing a deep dive into certain areas or corridors or neighborhoods. And we've always done that, and we'll continue to do that. So we, of course, already have a plan West Ashley, and that is incorporated into the comprehensive plan. And we will be looking at West Ashley anew with even broader eyes from the water and the land use standpoint. So I think that we definitely have unique attributes on the table as far as how we analyze each area. Will it be a full and complete borough plan through this comprehensive plan? Possibly not, but over time, I think you will find that we will have lots of planning that is unique to specifically James Island.
Garrett, you were on mute if you said something.
Yeah, I said thank you.
Kathy, you're on mute.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions about this? Was there somebody who was going to speak from the town at this point?
Kathy, this is Ashley Callahan. I can speak on behalf of the town. I know Councilwoman Mignano was going to speak, but she's having internet issues. Let's see. We are also, the town is also in the process of our comprehensive plan review. We've had 3 public workshops at Planning Commission. And of course, we've encouraged public participation in this process. We anticipate getting a final draft to council at the end of the year. And the draft is available on our website, and comments can be emailed in or during any of the workshop sessions that we're having at Planning Commission meetings. And as far as any new development, none to speak of. We did have a Board of Zoning Appeals meeting last night where they disapproved a special exception for an automatic car wash at the adjacent to the intersection of Fort Johnson and Folly. And that's all the update I have.
Okay, thank you. If there's anything else anybody wants to say, now is your chance. Any public comment? Well, now we come to election of officers, and I believe we just have a chairman and vice chairman. Does that sound right? And I would like to nominate Jenny Honeycutt as chairman. She was the vice chairman. That's why I did that.
I'll second that.
Any other, I guess we could do all in favor. Is that okay with you, Jenny? Were you expecting that?
Thank you.
Can we hear a speech from the nominee?
We got
Aye.
Jenny.
Speech.
Okay. So just raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
By acclamation, we now let Jenny, and then we have vice chairman. Is there any nominations? But anybody volunteer?
I'll nominate Ross. The city, it's time for the city to have a rep.
Oh, yeah.
Not cool. Not cool, Jenny. Not cool. The first act as chair is to nominate me. Not getting off to a good start. Well,
I think you'd be great. You'd be great. We need some young blood in here.
I'll second that motion, Councilmember Honey.
All in favor of Ross Appel, say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Aye.
Okay.
Nay.
That looks like that includes our session this time, and it'll be up to Jenny, and she'll be working with Francis, of course, at Town Hall to set it up. It'll probably be another Zoom meeting, but thank you all for participating tonight, and everybody stay safe, and let's hope those numbers go down so we can meet in person and talk to people in person.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
thanks, everybody.
Wear
Bye-bye.
your mask. Wear your
Wear your
mask,
masks.
everybody.
Great work all around.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.